Jimbo's Garage.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to Jimbo's Garage. Well, today's video is yet another gate. This is the last gate in the series of gates I've been making over the last month. Again, there's not much to it. It's about 4 feet wide, about 7 foot tall, but it has a lot of different and unique design to it. So let's get started on today's video. All right, so we're starting out with some 2-inch square tube. This is 063 wall thickness right here. This seems to be the go-to for me lately with fencing and gate, and it works well. A little thin, sometimes hard to work with, but I'm getting used to it. It's pretty good. Like usual, I'm getting everything all cut to dimension, get the 45s all done the way we need to, so I can start fabricating these things. And there it is. We're just putting this thing together. I'm using the fireball squares. I've had these things probably for a few months now, and I've just used these in the last 2 or 3 projects. I'm telling you, I don't know what I did without them. These things are amazing. They work perfectly. Just clamp everything together, and everything stays perfectly square. I haven't even found all the uses they're already using, but I'm just using them in the simplest form, and you can see how quick and easy it is. We're just tacking everything together right here, and one thing I want to point out on the right-hand side right there, you see a little gap left over, and that is for the lock box. In the past, what I've done is welded the frames completely together, then cut out the section and added the lock box, and it's always been a problem. I had one of my viewers suggest, why don't you just go ahead and build the lock box in as you build the frame. That's what I wanted to do right here, and actually that worked out perfectly. So I appreciate the input and the comments from the viewer that suggested that. So just double checking everything and getting everything tacked. Amazingly, this thing was perfectly square within like a 32nd of an inch. That's how close it was. This is the closest to being square I was, and I don't know if I'm going to contribute that to the fireball squares or it's just sheer luck. It just happened to get that way. But nevertheless, when things are that way, it makes fabricating a lot faster and a lot easier. And I'm just going and welding things up here after everything was perfectly square. And then this is the difference. You can see this lock box here. I'm using 2-inch square tube, but the biggest lock box I could get is 1 5/8 inch. That is to accommodate the locking devices that go in there. So that left a little bit of a gap on the back side. I'm flush to the front side where the gate opens and closes, but the back just had this little gap. So I just put a piece of flat bar stock in there and kind of cleaned that up a little bit and worked out really well. All right, so once I got everything all welded up around, and I do my normal, just grinding everything nice and clean. I just like to do that. I think it makes for a good looking gate. Some people complain about, you shouldn't grind your welds down. You're taking away the strength of the gate by doing that. But I've been doing this for years, and I've never had an issue. So it seems to work okay for me. This is a good clip right here of the Pro for Show ear protection that I've been wearing. This is something I've never really wore for up until just recently. And man, I'm telling you, you don't realize how much you really need it until you start wearing it all the time. And that's what happens here. It's something I'm getting used to. It's only been in the last six months or so that I've been wearing ear protection regularly. And wow, what a difference it does. It does make a really, really good difference. And these particular this particular ear protection is super lightweight, really easy to adjust, and feels good on my head. I was just going around just cleaning things up right here. This is trying to get all the welds cleaned up and get everything nice and smooth. Now it's time to start putting the 45s in the square tubing in, and that's what we're doing. We're putting everything in on a 45 here. And that's something I've never done before. Excuse me. This is a design by the owner and the contractor. And instead of putting the square tube vertically in a gate or fencing like you normally would see it, these are going to be laid in on a 45. And the beauty of this right here too is I hang on to a lot of my scraps, and I had maybe 30-40 pieces of this 5/8 tube that was between 2 and 3 feet long. And this is a good opportunity to get rid of at least some of them. You can see that this is the way I got rid of them using these short pieces in here. You know, trying to put this in, this is something I've never done before, so I was trying to get some sort of a rhythm together here that would work good for me, that would be efficient, easy and efficient on the assembly, and this is what I came up with. I just got a couple of 2x4 blocks. I cut them at 4 inches. 4 inches is the standard spacing that we usually use for fencing and gates here in California. It may be different where you're from. But just 4 inches, and that's what I've used, a couple blocks there, and I've also got a couple blocks underneath to raise them up to the height where I need to. I'm welding these flush to the back side because we're later going to be putting some screen on the back, and that's what the screen is going to be resting on. You know, so once I got halfway through, at least halfway through, I figured out a way that this is pretty efficient. I actually started going welding 2 at a time in there, and you know, like I said, you've never done anything like this before. As you're going along, you're trying to figure out what's going to work the best for you and the most efficiently. Well, here I am, right down almost to the end of the project right here, at least installing the pickets. And I finally figured it out, but by the time I got it figured out to where it was going pretty good, it was almost all over. You know, surprisingly, that I started on a 45, and as I got towards the end of this project, everything just started, is still on a 45, and is coming down to where it's going to look almost even. It's, as a matter of fact, it was within of like a quarter of an inch of being even on both sides, which is, I don't know if that's just luck or that's just the way it just happened to be, but everything was perfect. And hey, that's something that I never see. I'm telling you, I'm always fighting something. I'm always having to correct or fight something. Nothing ever goes my way. But in this particular situation, everything seemed to be falling right into place. And here it is right at the very end. I was able to utilize, again, some of the smaller pieces that I had left over, which is great. I often wondered if I was ever going to get rid of that stuff. But on things like this, that's where it works out. Well, at least there it is. That is around a 45. It's a little bit different looking. Like I said, I've never seen or done anything like this. But the next step is to put some radius pieces in. Now, this is, again, a 5/8 square tube, and I have these 20-footers cut at 10-foot lengths, and then I have my metal supply store roll them into a 12-inch radius. And this is what we're doing. We're putting a couple of angle pieces in here, a couple radius pieces in one direction and a couple in another direction. Now, this is not my design. Again, this is the design of the contractor and the homeowner that came together with this. They actually drew me a dimensional plan, and I've been working off of this plan as to the placement of where these radius pieces go. You might also see that there is a small side panel there to the left of the gate. That is something that I made. It is roughly about 6 inches wide on the bottom. There's a little offset. It goes to about 9 inches. It sits up on top of a block wall. So what we're doing right here is I'm taking this radius and we're going to run it right through into that side panel so it looks like it all flows together. That is what they wanted to do right there. So it makes it look pretty good, and it turned out pretty good. You know, these things are pretty awkward to cut, being so long and on a radius. So I found the best way to do it is to just clamp it right to the piece of gate that I'm working on, and able to cut out the pieces that I need to. That worked out pretty good. You know, a little zip cutter, cordless zip cutter right there with a cutoff wheel. Man, what a lifesaver. That thing's fast and efficient. There's the two pieces right in, and I'm just getting those tacked in, and then there are two more pieces that go in the opposite direction, and that's what we're going to be installing here next. There's the first one, and you can see how it overlaps. So the idea is to just put the first ones in. They're going to rest on top of the 45 pickets, and then this one is going to rest on top of the other ones. That's the way it was designed. And that worked out pretty good. And then this is the last piece right here that I'm just getting tacked in. So for the most part, there it is. Everything is all in place and where it needs to be. And then the last thing is I just need to go around and button up all the welds and just weld everything all the way around. One thing that I did notice is when I welded in the radius pieces right here, I initially just put 2 or 3 little tack welds about every foot or so apart, and thought that that would be all I really needed. But I noticed when I started moving the gate around and flipping around that they were clanging. The radius pieces were clanging to the 45 pieces, and in fact what I really needed to do is to weld every single bar to the radius pieces, and then that quieted up. There was no problems there after that. There's a lot of welds that have to happen, and I really like to weld everything all the way around. I don't like to leave any unwelded areas to allow any kind of rust or moisture to get through there. So that is what I've done all the way around. Every open cut is welded all the way around. And here I am just grinding the welds flat on the back side of the gate right here to accept that screen that's going to be going on there. I just want to be sure everything is going to fit nice and flat. And it doesn't take much to go around. There's not much of a weld right here, but just took short order right here with the angle grinder and a flap disc, and went around and just cleaned up everything nice and flat. Gloves is another thing that I've recently starting to wear a lot of lately, especially grinding. Black Stallion makes a variety of different gloves, for welding and all-purpose use. And these ones right here I chose are they're made out of pigskin. They're very comfortable working gloves. They're easy to get on, easy to get off, and work good for me. So here's the screen right here. This is I don't know how the thickness is of it. I want to say it's like 22 gauge, and the holes are spaced at a 1/16 inch on center, and they are a 1/16 of an inch. So it's pretty tight screen, but this is a pretty common screen for fabricators in this area to put on the back, and it's used for like a slight buffer, for a slight security type of screen. On certain occasions when you put it up, you can see out of it, but it's difficult to see in sometimes, and so this is why they use this screen. Now this screen comes in 4 foot by 7 foot pieces, which is perfect. My gate's just under 4 feet and just under 7 feet, so there wasn't much to cut off right here. You can see that I'm just using the zip cutter with cutoff wheel, and I've marked it with Sharpie, and I'm just going along and just cutting what I need to cut off. That works pretty good. No cords, no nothing. I really like this cordless tool. And there's the side, and I just repeat for the end right there. You can see the end is probably about 6 inches left over, and of course, this is the only size they come in. And now keep in mind, I did have a side panel, and that side panel was only 6 inches wide. I had to buy a whole other sheet just to cover 6 inches, but hey, you got to do what you got to do. Just finishing up right here, cutting out for the lockbox. And then here's something here that, I try to listen to the comment sections, and you guys have good input sometimes. I read everything, and I'm always constantly learning. And, other people have got ideas about how things should be done, and I have a different idea. But, hey, I'm constantly learning, and I listen to the advice that you guys put out there as well. And one of the guys said, hey, how do you put your screen on if you don't prime and paint it? How does that section get primed and painted behind the screen that's up against the flat bar? And I thought about that, and that's a pretty good idea. So this right here, I primed it, and what I should have done here as well, and I didn't do it, is I should have painted it. I just didn't think about it, but I did get it primed. Yeah. Anyways, we're putting the screen on, and to attach the screen, you can see that I've got this 3/4 by 1/8 inch flat bar stock, and I cut the pieces out all the way around the perimeter, laid the screen in there about an inch offset. You can see it's about an inch offset all the way around to allow for the flat bar stock, plus give it some sort of a reveal there. And I've noticed that you can't have enough clamps when you're clamping this stuff together. Every foot apart is almost not enough. You need to be every 6 inches. It seems to want to flex up a little bit, but anyways, this is what I'm using, and this is what works. I'm going around. You can see it's about every 6 to 8 inches apart, and those tacks are about an inch long. I'm trying to stay uniform, make everything look the way it should be, so it looks somewhat nice. Once I just finish the one side, then I just move the clamps to the other side and just work my way all the way around the whole gate itself. You know, coming up here to the lockbox, you know, there's a little bit of detail that has to happen that needs to get around there. And, you know, it wasn't too big of a deal, but still, same process, just get everything tacked all the way around. This is what's going to hold everything on the outside edge, I should say, all nice and secure. You'll see here in a minute that when this is all done, that we're going to attach the center with some self-tapping screws. Just the last piece right here, and we'll have this buttoned up. All right, so here is the self-tapping screws. You can see I've used a Sharpie, and I've got some sort of a pattern here, roughly every other bar. So that's like 8 inches on center one way, and I got like 12 inches on center the other way. I just wanted to be sure that when I put these screws in, that when it was all said and done and over with, it looked like there was a rhyme or reason why, or a pattern that I had put together here. So that's what I chose to do here. Now these self-tapping screws are about a 1/2 inch long, and I found that they work out the best. It's a panhead screw, so it gives a little bit bigger head on the surface. It works out really good for attaching screen like this to the 5/8 picket. So you know the screw's not going to go all the way through the picket. I've tried all different sizes, and this seems to work the best. Does a great job of holding that screen in there nice and tight. Well, there it is. I finally got some paint on it, and the project is complete. You know, it was a good little project, good little learning experience. I've never done anything quite like this before, but it was fun. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram. Check out my website, JIMBO'sGarage.com. Thanks for watching. See you on the next video.
See you next time on Jimbo's Garage.